Pledge of allegiance and start the meeting.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We've gotten so much better. Okay, good evening. Welcome everyone to the Dexter City Council meeting of Monday, April 11th. Let me clear my throat. Ms. Pam, if you would please call the roll.
Ara, present. Cousins,
Yes.
Fisher. Yes. Griffin. Hubbard. Here. Michelle.
Present.
Keo.
Yes.
Alex. Aaron.
Absent at this point. Okay. Item C on the agenda is approval of the meeting minutes from our city council meeting on March 28th. Moved by Griffin, thank you. Support. Second by Cousins, thank you, Paul. Ms. Griffin, any comments on the minutes?
I had two. On page 3, under Justin's update, the first bullet says the community survey is live. 24 individuals have taken it thus far. An email update and notation on Facebook will go out tomorrow. Each notation should read notification.
Yep.
So, page 3, Justin's bullet, which.
First
One.
one.
Okay, about the survey notation should be notification. And then on page 7, just under my comment, it says, right now, it says, I hope to get to next fire station meeting. I think just to clarify, something like, I'm looking forward to continuing the fire station discussion. It was more than just that I wanted to attend the meeting, but that I was looking forward to having it.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? Just last part, I'm looking forward to.
Continuing the fire station discussion. Thank you.
Okay, minutes.
Uh,
Mr. Cousins, any comments on the minutes? Other council member comments? Ms. Pam, will you please call the vote to approve the minutes?
Griffin,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
Cousins.
Yes.
Fisher.
Mhm.
Hubbard.
Yes.
Ara,
Yes.
Keo.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you. We have Lieutenant Alan Hunt here from the Washington County Sheriff's Office under prearranged tonight. Thank you for joining us.
Hope everybody's doing well. It's been a little while since I've seen everybody. It's nice to see everybody's faces again.
Yeah, likewise. Likewise.
Things are starting to pick back up for us now that we're kind of getting back to business as usual. We've been increasing a lot of traffic enforcement throughout the collaboration. So hopefully you guys have been seeing the cars out there making a lot more stops. If you look at the stats, things are up significantly. So that's a good thing. Other than that, there hasn't been anything too crazy going on, fortunately, which is always good. We did have a break-in back on March 19th over to residents under construction and some juveniles. We were able to identify the juveniles. The parents were notified and we were able to work out something with the property owner. So handling it civilly from there to take care of the damages that were done. Fortunately, it wasn't too extensive. So that's kind of the biggest incident we've had as of recently. Also, there's a stolen car from over to the car dealership that we were able to locate after we put a BOL in the units. We were able to recover that vehicle for the dealership as well. So those are kind of a couple of the big highlights. One of the new things the sheriff's office recently started was our online reporting system. So basically what this allows people to do is they can submit certain police reports online now. So they don't need to contact us directly. They can get online, go to our website, and there's a link there. It's pretty clearly marked to file certain things. Things you can actually file are harassing phone calls if there's no known suspects, identity theft if there's no known suspects, and we get a lot of those. We get a lot of those calls where somebody hacked my Amazon account or whatever, or somebody did X, Y, and Z, and vast majority of those cases go unsolved because a lot of times it's come from overseas or places that we just don't have the ability to follow up on physically. unfortunately. But if there's no suspects in the identity theft cases, you can file that online as well. Lost property, we get those complaints from time to time. If there's a larceny or theft and there's no suspects, again, if there's no suspects, a lot of times there's minimal stuff for us to follow up on. Regardless of any of these, it's a situation where the sergeant and a deputy will review the report that was submitted by the citizen, take a look at those things, identify if there's any additional questions that should either be asked or anything that should be followed up on based on the information that was given. And then if we do need to follow up with them, we certainly will. So even though they're submitting it online, doesn't mean that's the end of it, but we look at everything and make sure it's still taken care of properly. Other things is like damaged property, vandalism, again, no suspects, and you can file that online, or accident, non-intentional property damage. So damaged property that was accidental, that would otherwise need to be reported, but that people might report to us. They can now handle all that online, so that they don't have to come into the station or call 911 or have a deputy come out to the house, kind of free up a little bit of our resources. Make it a little bit more convenient for folks. But again, like I said, it will all get reviewed, just like every other report that we generate does through our chain of command. And then we follow up on anything that actually needs to be followed up on. So other than that, as far as staffing levels go, we've been steadily working on getting our staffing levels back up. We've been low. We had a number of retirements last year. Over the last little bit here, that the retirements have slowed down, and they will through the rest of this year. So this year is hopefully our ability to catch up a little bit. We have one vacancy currently in the Dexter collaboration. So we've got one of our day shift, afternoon shift flex cars is still running unfilled. And so we bank those hours and then use that for some of the special events within town, whether it's the parades or whatever. We can use those hours later when we need additional staffing for those purposes. But all our afternoon shifts are currently being filled, 2 by deputies who have chosen to work in the Dexter area. And then 1 is being filled by a temporary, we call it a step 5 deputy that's basically just finished their training. And so they're getting bounced around every 3 or 4 months to various areas within the county to get experience in all the various working areas. So we have one of those people working on afternoon shift right now, and everybody else is our regular staff that we'll have all year long. So overall, for the police services division, we're at about a 15% vacancy rate. So we're slowly catching up. We have 15 full-time positions that are currently open. However, we have 2 sponsorships currently in progress at the Schoolcraft Police Academy. And so those people sponsoring through, as long as they successfully complete the police academy, we'll get those people out probably August, September-ish, I believe, is when they should be kind of getting the road and starting the formal training with us. And then starting next month, we actually have 7, possibly even 8 people that we're sponsoring through the Washtenaw Community College Police Academy. And so, but again, between the police academy and training, we're not really going to see those bodies until November-ish, to be realistic. But again, that catches us up significantly from where we are, or have been. And so at the end of the year, we'll be looking better, and that's not counting various people that are in the process with us, and that we're trying to hire people who are actually have experience and are certified law enforcement officers already. So we're slowly getting there, and hopefully this year we can catch up a little bit more, and that'll give us more dedicated staff specific to the area, so we have a little more time here for you guys. So that is, for the most part, what I got for you guys. Oh, the corrections division too. If anybody knows anybody that wants to be a corrections officer, we are hurting for corrections officers. We're down to like 26 positions there.
Wow.
They don't have the same kind of pipeline that we do with a police academy. Coming to the road patrol, so the corrections, it's usually people just come in from off the street, and then they have to go through a corrections academy within 1 year of hire. And so there's not like a direct, like, to the job pipeline like we have police academies, because we go out all over the state. We travel all the way up into the UP and visit all the police academies and give our spiel. And we're told that we have the most polished presentation of any department that people see. And so everybody likes to give us a good look anyway. But we don't have that kind of thing for the corrections division, unfortunately. So if you know anybody that has any interest in law enforcement, it's a good career choice. We pay better than just about any other jail in the state. So we are hurting for bodies and could use any kind of help you guys can give us there. So.
Questions from council?
Hi, I'm Jamie. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Maybe I saw you online for one meeting.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I'm just trying to get a better sense of staffing. So I can totally appreciate that you guys are trying to get back up to speed and numbers have been down. You gave some idea of like how many people are here. I just want to make sure I specifically understand the coverage here in the city.
Okay.
What is the ideal in terms of number of people and like where and when they are versus what we have right now actually? So I'm just trying to get a sense of, is there one person here 24 hours a day? Are there two people here, but it's only noon to 8? Or can you give me those specifics?
Right,
Or
yeah,
is it
so
up to the day?
basically, it varies during the times of the year, so all year long, you'll always have at least one deputy working assigned to the collaboration. So you'll have one deputy working all the time, and then there's also a sergeant assigned to the entire west side of the county, which is basically the main areas they cover the Dexter collaboration south area, and then down the Manchester collaboration. So there's always going to be a west side sergeant working in addition to the deputy that's specifically assigned to the Dexter area.
And Dexter area includes the two townships?
Correct, yes. So Dexter
And Webster.
Township, the city, and then Webster Township, you guys are in a collaboration, that deputy shared resources between that group.
Okay.
Now, that being said, that's the minimum. So that's like our absolute lowest we will go. We will always have one on. Now, for day shift, we generally have two on. For afternoon shift, we have 3 deputies assigned, but we will generally have 2 on. Now, minimums between Labor Day and Memorial Day on afternoon shift go to 2. So during the summer hours, things busier around here, we bump up to 2 deputies. And then also during the summer, Deputy Diesel, who works as our school liaison officer at Dexter Schools, he comes over and works basically as a complaint car within the city specifically, because in your contract, you guys essentially pay for a certain percentage of his PSU cost. And so when he's not specifically working in the school and school is out, he comes over and works in the city for you guys. But he's still available for essentially his backup to the 2 townships, but his focus is to stay in the city for the most part. And then midnight shift, there's 2 deputies that work midnight shift. There's always going to be at least 1 on. A lot of days there's going to be 2 on. So same thing with day shift. Right now, most of the time there's at least 2 on, but a couple days a week because of their lead day pattern, you only have 1. But we've been used, there's that vacant position, which is a day shift, afternoon shift rotator. We can kind of, once if that position is filled, we can bounce that person between day shift and afternoon based on what the staffing levels are on any given day. And so the sergeant works that out a month ahead of time and kind of move them around. But currently, because we're banking those hours and saving those hours, I've been having the sergeant, because we do have so many banked hours earlier in the year already, fill the day shift spots. So there's always at least 2 deputies working on day shift currently. Even though it's not the minimum, but it's a better coverage plan for us, I think.
And what are the hours of, so it sounds like there are 3 different shifts. There's midnight, day, and afternoon.
Correct. So midnights is midnight to 8 a.m. Day shift is 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And then afternoon shift is 4 p.m. to midnight.
And when they are here, this is helpful, thank you. When they are here, like in the collaboration, and they're not responding to a specific call, what are they generally doing?
Proactive patrol, follow-up, because our deputies, pretty much we've got a very limited detective bureau where they focus on major crimes, homicides, like serious assaults, any kind of like burglary, or you're talking like 6 figures, things along those lines, where they'll give some assistance to the deputies. But our deputies are responsible for the entire caseload, unlike a lot of agencies where, you know, they take the initial report and they pass it off to a detective that follows up on the very like the retail fraud complaint, like stealing from a store, something like that, where our deputies handle that entire case. So they'll either be working follow-up for their cases, depending on what's been going on, or they'll be doing proactive patrol within the community, traffic stops, any kind of direct patrols that we might give them in the summer. A lot of times they'll tell them, hey, walk up and down inside the parks and spend some time there being seen, get out and do some foot patrol, those kind of things. So.
I think we asked in our we have a community survey going on right now. And one of the questions I think was getting at basically, are there areas where they're looking for more enforcement, whether it's speed or, you know, something related to traffic? Are you able to consider any direction from council or staff if we hear feedback, or, you know, we on council have a suggestion, like we're doing a complaint specifically about this intersection or this particular thing? we can share that with.
Yeah,
you
yep,
as
I
staff.
get those messages from Justin fairly frequently. Sean sent me stuff in the past.
Okay.
Where, you know, if you have a concern or even like just one person,
Mhm.
you know, it says, hey, can I get a little bit more enforcement in X, Y, and Z location because I live here and people are pulling the stop sign, you know, whatever. So if you're seeing that kind of thing, let us know and I can let the deputies know and make sure they're trying to spend some time. on it.
And if a resident has a complaint, do you want them to go through the city to get to you, or is there a way that they can share that concern?
Either way, they can either share it, right, if they've already, you know, voiced it to you and you don't mind just passing it on to us, that's fine, unless there's maybe you think there's more information we might be able to glean from them. Just to kind of make it simpler on their end, so they don't feel like they're getting pushed from A to B to C
Okay.
to make the same complaint. Or you can, you know, depends on the situation, if you want to send them directly to us, they can call our non-emergency number.
Yeah.
Or just go to the station and knock on the door, hit the call box there, and we'll send somebody over.
Okay. And then when we see in the reports, we see number of stops versus number of citations, and we
Mm-hmm.
talked about this a bit amongst ourselves, where it seemed like there was a citation rate of about 10%. And I said, is that normal? It's like, but then, you know, then the realization was, well, not all stops necessarily warrant a citation. So I'm just curious, do you feel like the citations, are you giving an appropriate amount of citations for the stops that you're making? Is there anything more to understand?
10 to 15% is pretty standard for the sheriff's office across the county.
Okay.
So again, that question comes up all the time because people feel like, you know, our job is out there writing tickets and things like that. We don't look at it as a sense of creating revenue for anybody. We don't want to create that impression. So we leave that as entirely up to the discretion of the deputy based on the situation, what's going on. So they'll look at a whole litany of things, you know, they'll pull up the person's driving record and see what's their driving record look like. Do they get pulled over a lot, even if they're not getting tickets? Are they, you know, they'll take them, are they a local resident or, you know, a whole litany of things. What's the nature of the offense that occurred? How egregious was it? Was it minor? Was it something, you know, pretty significant? So like if the deputy's not writing a speeding ticket for somebody that's doing like 20, 25 over, then I'm sending a message saying, hey, I can't back you on this one, so you got to do something there. But everybody has their little thresholds where it's like some people, it's like, yeah, if you're doing 10 over, you're getting a ticket, or you're doing 15 over, you're definitely getting a ticket. So different deputies will have different kind of criteria in their own mind for kind of making some of those decisions, but they will take kind of the totality of circumstance into consideration when they're making that decision, whether, you know, because again, our goal is to change people's behavior, not necessarily to punish people or anything like that. So it is education, talking to the person, creating a positive contact through a little bit of talking to the person more appropriate, or is citing the person not appropriate. And so we got to make that decision based on everything we're seeing with that incident. So.
Okay, thank you so much. I've been looking forward to coming here and answering all of my questions.
Great.
Other questions? Zach?
I'll try to get some quick ones. So if you have a suspect for one of those things, you shouldn't report it online. You should old school, drive to the station, hit the button and wait for someone to show up.
You can either do that or just call our non-emergency. That way you don't even inconvenience yourself coming to the station unless you're driving, happen to be driving by. Just call our non-emergency line, or, you know, worst case scenario, 911, it's the same person picks up the phone. But it just helps them triage it between one of those two numbers. But just call the non-emergency line and we'll get somebody out there.
Do we ever have bike patrols on our trails?
We do not up here, but we are currently training up a few people. I'm not sure who got selected yet. Just had an instructor certified in bike patrols last year. So, but that is something, if you guys think you're interested in, we could potentially see if any of our staff are certified, or could get some of our staff certified in that. But I know we just recently purchased a number of bikes for some of the other areas.
We have had some vandalism on the trails.
Yeah, no, I remember last summer we had some issues. So.
One of the things I frequently get calls on, and I have seen this myself, is the truck parking and unloading from LaFontaine. It's a little bit better than it has been. When I called in, this was last fall, I called in. The non-emergency number goes same as dispatch. I waited there for 25 minutes.
Really?
They unloaded 4 cars and left, and I didn't see a patrol car.
Oh, so it took 25 minutes to kind of call dispatch and someone showed up? Or?
No one showed up, the truck left, and I left.
Gotcha, yeah. And so that could, again, because if there's one deputy working and they were tied up by another incident, something like that, it's going to get pushed down the list of priorities. So,
Is there anything we can do to get quicker response for that? Because the 2 times I've seen it, most recently, I have almost seen an accident.
Yeah.
Where they're parked in the center lane.
No, I'm familiar, and all the guys that work here regular, are totally familiar with that situation and know what's going on. Like I've driven by, because I drive an unmarked vehicle, and I've driven by and seen it happen and stopped and talked to the driver, and said, hey, man, you can't do this here, you gotta pull it into the lot. It's one of our agreements with the business, and they're usually pretty understanding and take care of it. But again, it totally depends on what's available, you know. You've got limited resources between the 3 townships when you've got 1 or 2 cars working, and that can suck up your resources pretty quick depending on what's happening. But if nothing's going on, somebody, you know, the time it can take, if you say you're on the far end of the far end, shouldn't take more than 10 minutes really to get over here to deal with something like that. If nobody's busy or tied up on something. But most of the time, actually, they're more central. And so really, I would think a 5-minute response time would even be kind of a long time if they weren't tied up with something. So it could have just been circumstantially that other things were going on at the time that prevented us from getting there.
That's one thing that I would love to see citation issued every single time they talk there. I think that's the only way to change behavior of carrier companies. Is there anything we can do to make your job easier?
Well, that opens up a big box. No, just to be, I think the best thing, and I know it's been on the table for some time, is a new station would always be a wonderful thing. The station we have is older and, you know, it's been there for a long time, so that's always, that'd be in my wish list. Other than that, you know, staffing, you know, it's one of those things where you can say, you know, staffing levels that we have here are adequate. But at the same time, you see the into and out area time. So it's one of those things that is pulled back and forth from the other areas. We're sending deputies from here over to SILE frequently, SILE coming in here to help frequently, just because when something significant does happen, especially today's day and age, we want to be extra careful. We want to be very mindful. The way we operate as an office is very different from like the way I operated 20 years ago, where it's like, all right, go you run, get it done, handle it, get out of Dodge, you know, push, 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 go, go, go. Solve the problem, go. Just get it solved as quick as you can, get on to the next thing. Nowadays, we take a very different philosophical approach to things. And so that is make sure we're giving the best possible service at the time for whatever it is we're dealing with. However long that takes to deal with it appropriately, we're going to do that. But now, obviously, if you're dealing with somebody that's complaining about, you know, my neighbor's fence line or whatever, and they're just arguing back and forth, they're going to deal with it as long as you can. But then if it comes in where somebody's injured or somebody's hurt or somebody's trying to injure somebody else, you're going to prioritize and move your resources to that location. But at that same time, if you get like a domestic assault or something like that, you're going to tie up all the resources from Dexter on that one incident for a little while, whether it's transport, you know, investigating the scene, making sure everybody's safe, and transporting potentially somebody to jail, all those kind of things. And now, if you've got 1 or 2 people working plus the sergeant, you've just eaten up a significant amount of resources pretty quickly. And so it's one of those things where in today's day and age, you know, my pipe dream personally would be always more bodies. But at the same time, you guys have a different role, different perspective. You got to be financially sound and figure out what is really best for your community, what kind of level of service do you really need. And so I can, you know, the sheriff or the commander can kind of lead you or be a partner with you on that part. But from my perspective, as you know, the operations lieutenant, more bodies is always good because that just keeps, you know, keeps everybody safer.
What's the most common reason for pulling somebody over?
Most common, honestly, it varies person to person. Some people really like doing speed enforcement. Some people like, you know, looking at stop signs,
Okay.
Distracted driving. It really varies person to person. I couldn't tell you specifically what our deputies in this area are focusing on mostly. So.
Gotcha. We've got a couple of construction projects coming up. I assume you're aware of those. One on 2nd Street,
Yep, 1 second.
and then when's Broad and 3rd gonna start?
July 1st. Yeah, just keep us up to date and make sure we put it out to folks.
Yeah, just one more thing. You mentioned the station. Do we, I don't have the question for Justin or anybody else, do we have specs from you or on
We
what they're
had,
looking for in that space? Is
yeah,
what
we
they're
had conversations with Lisa King when she was our lieutenant, and came up with the area plan for the sheriff's
Okay.
portion of the building.
So I don't know if that conversation needs to be resurrected or not. You mentioned it.
No, I know.
Our conversation, so,
I'm always, you asked, so I figured I'd throw my pipe dreams. But we
yeah. I just wanna make sure
understand
we have
the
the
limitations of everything that goes into that and all the nuance, and it's something that's been on the board's radar for a long time, so.
So,
Hello, Sana Mara. I don't have a question. I just have a comment. I want to thank you and Sergeant Springs for the timeliness and the care you gave to the issue that I brought you a couple months ago. So I appreciate
Of
that.
course.
thank you for your time this evening.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for
Everything
getting
you're
it
doing.
out. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Be safe.
It's good to see everybody. Take care.
Gotcha.
And again, if any of you have any questions at any time, feel free to reach out. Don't feel like you have to wait for me to come every several months or whatnot to reach out on anything. Just contact us whenever you have a question.
Will do.
Take care.
Okay, we're down to item E, approval of the agenda,
And move we approve the agenda as presented.
moved by Fisher. Thank you, Donna.
Support Cousins.
Second by Cousins. Thank you, Paul.
Could we pull out the sewer lead replacement? I just have a couple of questions on that.
Sure. Want to go down to new business updates? Okay, so K4 is going to be M2. Jamie?
Anyone want a second to add a discussion item on next steps for the fire station discussion? Or is that being incorporated into a report somewhere?
I think the suggestion is to have a workshop next meeting. This time, I think I remember seeing that on your summary of dates, right?
That was part of the discussion at the last.
I just want to make sure it's covered somewhere. So either in someone's report or if we need it.
All right, let's cover it. We'll cover that as it's there. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. We're going to move K4 down to M2 off the consent agenda. Please call the vote to approve the agenda as modified.
So you said move K4.
Yeah, to M2.
Hubbard. Yes. Michelle's.
Yes.
Arnold.
Yes.
Cousins.
Yes.
Fisher.
Yes.
Griffin.
Yes.
Keo.
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you. We have an agenda. Are there any declarations of conflicts of interest on tonight's meeting that anybody sees? None at this time. We have no public hearings this evening, so we're down to non-arranged participation. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak under non-arranged tonight? Okay, we have a few people online. If anyone wants to speak online, Stephen, I see you're there. Please raise your hand, or you can raise your hand feature so we can unmute you. Okay, looks like no participation at this point, so we'll keep moving down to I. There's two communications in the packet, the meeting calendar and a letter I received from the county. I have not had a follow-up from Ms. Gelati on this, so I've not actually spoken to anybody about it any more than what you see here. You haven't had any conversation, I'm going to reach out to you, have I? But anyway, wanted everyone to be aware of that. I assume that we could, if we were interested in being an investment partner of types that could join after that deadline if we wanted, but that was the first round. Any questions on the communications at this time? Okay, our first report this evening will come from our Public Services Superintendent. Welcome, Tim. Or our
How's
assistant, I
everybody
should say.
tonight?
Good.
So obviously it's 2 week report, just as usual. So any questions, feel free to answer from any time. Oh,
Yep, I had a resident just reached out to me, who lives on Lexington Circle out Dexter Crossing. I don't understand her comment, but you might. She said that the concrete that was just poured is not breaking off. And she's wondering if other people had that problem.
Yeah, I actually got that right at the end of the day, and I was gonna check in with her tomorrow morning to talk to him, and if he couldn't get to it, I was gonna take care of it myself.
What does that mean?
I don't know, that's like, it was confusing to me
Okay.
also,
Okay.
breaking off, I think she meant that maybe it was popping off already, maybe it was chipping away or something like that from shoddy work. or whatever it
Okay.
might be.
Okay.
She said it was not written here.
Yeah.
So
Maybe you
I,
tried to send it.
I also got that email.
Okay.
And the way that I took it was, I think she mispronounced or misspelled now.
Oh, it's now.
And so,
Oh, right.
and so I think she is on Lexington Circle where we just had the Dexter Crossing project. And there was concrete curb work that was done as part of that project. And so I'm wondering if there's pieces of the new sections that were.
And that's how I
already breaking it down.
I didn't want to put words in her mouth, but that's how I interpret it. It's probably something's popping a little bit.
Okay.
Could be a lot of things.
That makes sense.
So.
Thanks.
Zach?
Could you give a quick touch on the NUPCO violation?
So back in January, we gave them a letter, extended their contract, letter didn't stipulate the stipulations. One was they were gonna do less testing, but they had to come up with certain things and meet the criteria and stuff like that. They had a problem with their discharge meter and it frozen up, so they didn't get a read for over a month. And of course, that's a violation from them, that their phosphorus levels were up to. But ever since that, we went over there, took care of the meter problem, also let them know that just because it wasn't running doesn't mean that they can't, they still have to do that as far as metering wise. So what we did was every week, I used to, I don't anymore, I go over there and get a read. And when they are in violation like this, especially when we don't have an active read through that meter, then we use their regular meter, their domestic meter, that's, or excuse me, their meter for the brewery, and that's what we charge them with. They weren't happy with that, but unfortunately, you know, so they, the plan is basically in June, we're gonna revisit it. And they have to be, the first step, they have to have a plan put together for us as far as how they're gonna attack phosphate, or excuse me, phosphorus. If that's not put in place, we're gonna go back to the testing, more testing than it was like it was before in January. If they do, then we're gonna revisit and they have to have some type of work done by December to keep these plants going.
One more question with less happy chemicals. I did receive a couple of calls from folks who remembered last spring, they saw the little things planted in the lawns in the parks there that says don't walk on the grass. I would be interested in hearing if there are options for maintenance of the grass that don't require spray applications. I know it's tricky. I work Mount Pleasant Parks in the cemetery. People are really picky about cemetery grass. But especially with all the folks getting outside, it'd be nice to see what options are, even if it includes more dandelions.
Thinking more granular type.
Well, so and part of that, a lot of those complaints came from Mill Creek Park North. And we have problems getting grass to grow there normally. And so like when we had to dig up that, when we dug up that area to flatten it out for the ice rink, it took forever to get grass to grow back there. Combination of it being so wet and kind of flooded out and just not ideal conditions for grass growing. So we'll talk to Kurt, but
Yep. It may be a more intensive long fix where we have to do soil amendments. No, not all at once, but there are ways you can treat it. And I'd like to try to get chemicals out of it. I know it's not a good thing.
I just want to second that. I've had people mention that to me as well. And personally, it's something I would like to just look at options for. I mean, whether or not it makes sense, I don't know, but I'd like to see what we can do differently.
You know what, I wanted to say one thing though, also, we haven't had much work done, obviously, because of everything that's going on as far as supplies and everything on Second Street. I talked to the inspector from OHM today. It sounds like maybe tomorrow, I might see a little bit of storm work started, the one from Dover towards Central Street. And they've been up there working just sporadically, and it's been minimal, so.
Other questions? Donna?
Yeah, but not to Tim. Are you talking, well,
No,
it's
you're fine.
related,
No,
it's
you're good.
related, but you folks that are saying you don't want them to spray, is that because you don't want them to spray a toxic substance? Or then I heard later it was don't get on the grass, so I need help here to clarify what the issue is. What are we looking into and why?
Personally, I think there are better ways to, I mean, deal with grass than toxic substances. I
So
mean,
for you.
I don't like, I walk the dog and I don't like, I just, sometimes those signs stay out
Sure,
there longer and I'm like, should I let the dog on the grass? Should I not let the dog on the grass? And I mean, grass is natural, right? Well, actually, it's not, but that's a whole different topic. But, I'm not for toxic substances.
Okay, so that was behind it. Okay, I just wondered what we were talking about.
Nope, good question.
Yeah, absolutely. Look into it.
Okay,
It did relate to you, sort of.
Yeah.
thanks for your report. Appreciate it.
11 lights. from DTE.
11 lights.
Yep.
Oh,
Making
I
sure it
know.
gets there every single time.
I've got one more.
Yeah.
There's that Christmas decoration, a stocking out on Dexter Chelsea. Is that something they put up or did we forget one?
I'm not-
Yeah, that's them.
That's, isn't it
That's
Jenny's?
Trively or not Trively.
Oh, Dexter. Yeah.
It's right out past the house transmission or wherever puts the,
Okay.
that's not us.
That's not us.
Okay.
No.
I didn't think, I thought, well, can't be that, I thought, well, I guess it could be.
Yeah, our decoration stop at the bridge.
Okay, okay. Thanks.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
They better get that down or they're not gonna have much left. I'll tell you, it's looking pretty tough. It's tattered.
Okay, next up is our community development manager. Michelle, online, how are you?
I'm fine. How's council this evening?
Good? Good.
Excellent. Okay. So you have my 2-week report in front of you. And before I go into any verbal updates, do you have any questions for me?
So Michelle, I received a call today from Steve Brower,
Mm-hmm.
and he told me that the Mill Creek Brewery folks are stopping the process.
That's not the information I got from Allison before I left, or the day that I left, which was Friday. So unless a decision's been made since then, she was reporting after they had had the meeting with their client and things were moving forward.
Okay, I did place a call to Nate Pound. I traded a text with him, but I don't have a conversation, haven't had a conversation with him yet. I figured we'll have a source to find out what's going on, but.
I'm
Steve's-
scheduled to, Justin and I are scheduled to meet with Steve tomorrow regarding tree replacement at Dexter Wellness Center. I can always, we can always have a conversation then as well for clarification on the Mill Creek Brewery.
That's up to you. I just
Okay.
wondered if you had heard anything similar or,
The complete opposite. When did Steve contact you, Sean?
I called him back at noon because he texted me sometime in the morning, 10:30, 11.
Okay,
So.
I'll follow up and then provide an update.
Actually would hate to lose this thing over 14 spaces. Okay, I mean, that site's gonna be a challenge no matter what or when.
Correct.
And anyway, I will report to everybody once I talk to Nate. So you see an email from me as soon as I can talk to him. I'll let you
Okay.
know what I hear from him, but I think there was a lot of confusion at the planning commission meeting
Hmm.
for those votes. I reached out to Matt Kowalski and shared that with him. I think that there should be another discussion on that topic. I'd hate to think that this thing has gone on as far as it's gone. And I mean, we haven't even had a chance to talk about it. So my goal is going to be to convince them otherwise, but at this point in time, it might also require a second conversation by the planning commission.
So the applicant they can come back and ask for an additional waiver under 501G. As the way it stands currently, the planning commission waived 14 of the 28 spaces that they requested, which
Okay.
means that there are 29 spaces, if my math is correct, that they either have to provide on site, or they have the ability to make the offer to voluntarily pay into the parking fund, and then they negotiate that price with city council. So your current resolution is $9,000 per space. There's only been one other time since that resolution was adopted that council had to even negotiate. That was with Erratic Ales. They asked for a reduced amount. They came in at 2,500 and city council did accept it. And the only thing that they asked in addition to that was to be allowed to pay that over 5 years, which council did agree to. The planning commission fully understood that their job is not to negotiate the price. They were grateful, if you will, once they understood why the applicant had indicated what they were going to ask council for. It was a matter of transparency, not as a matter of anything else. Planning commission knows it does not negotiate. So the applicant can come to you and ask you for an amount less than 2,500. And if city council is amenable to that, it can be less than that. It's all within your purview.
But I was gonna report it under my report, but since it's on her report, I figured I'd share the news. So once I talk to Nate, I'll be happy to share more.
I agree. I like this project. I would like the opportunity to discuss it at our table here. So whatever needs to happen to make that happen. So I appreciate all the work that's happening behind the scenes. My question for you, Michelle, was any update on ordinance violations on Dover, ordinance enforcement on Dover? I don't know if there's any additional information you can share either here or outside of the meeting on, are we actively enforcing anything at the address on Dover?
Since the last time I communicated with you, Jamie, excuse me, the question that you asked, I have not gone out and been able to take pictures and do the documentation of it. But that's something that I can do now that Grace is here. We can start that. If this is resident concerns or you've noticed it as you've walked or driven by or run by, this will be an ongoing circumstance with that property owner. And it will not be cleaned up overnight. It's going to take, and some of council who have been on for a while will recognize this, this particular address on Dover as one that we've already had to go through and clean up once. It's a long and laborious process.
So I asked because a resident continues to reach out to me about it. So my response to that person is either like help you with the documentation. I mean, what can we, is there anything that this resident can do or just, it's a recurring concern. And so I'm just trying to figure out what I can do to, I don't know, alleviate slightly.
The resident can reach out to my office. They can fill out a written complaint if they'd like. It still remains anonymous unless it goes to court. And if it goes to court, then whoever made the complaint may be called as a witness. We have not ever had to go that far, but we have ended up in court with this particular applicant before.
And generally speaking, as far as ordinance enforcement goes, I think it maybe kind of came up in passing, maybe at our joint meeting, and somebody referenced, oh, your ordinance enforcement officer, and you kind of had to say, we don't have one of those. As far as that goes in the city, are you comfortable with the resources we have available for ordinance enforcement? Do you wish we had a dedicated ordinance enforcement officer? I don't know how common that is in communities. Do you have any, can you comment on that in general, in terms of whose role it should be for ordinance enforcement? Or do we need more resources for that?
Jamie, are you asking me or did you direct that to Zach? I couldn't hear.
You, sorry, you.
Now that we have Grace, just like when we had Michael, having that extra person on hand did help with the enforcement issue. Excuse me. But without having that extra person, we are at a disadvantage. We have never been a community that actively or proactively goes out, at least from my office, and looks for issues. It's generally been complaint driven. Excuse me. In situations like the one on Dover, if I'm not hearing from if I'm not hearing from residents, then what I'm taking away from that is it's not so bad right now. When it gets bad, then they let me know and we start the cycle all over again.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that update.
You're welcome.
Other questions from Michelle?
So have any questions regarding the barrier-free report that I included, came in from OHM?
That there was a barrier-free parking space report attached to Michelle's report.
That was helpful.
It appears you have enough barrier-free and the locations are appropriate within the downtown. There could be more on Baker Road and Ann Arbor Street. Excuse me. I'll take this information and share it with the DDA at their next meeting.
Doesn't mean we can't add more.
You're absolutely right, Sean.
But if we're providing more than we need to already,
Yeah, but
like, we might want to consider that too. Maybe we're in the wrong places. I don't know.
okay, well, if we need to, I mean, I appreciate the information that was shared. It's good information.
Right. You had wanted that, that inventory. When I say you, I mean council. And it's nice that OHM was able to do this without a costly going out and having to re-inventory. It was all there in the parking study.
Gotcha.
I agree that also that was helpful. I do have a question. It's on page 31 in the packet. Maybe I'm having a hard time envisioning what the barrier-free on-street parallel parking space would look like. Maybe I guess if we have one at all. But does that require, if we were to add one of those, does that require modification on our part? Otherwise, it seems like you're having to make it wider. So then you have to do a sidewalk or?
If it's a parallel space, which usually that's what Baker and Ann Arbor Street are, then it's not making it any wider. I'll double check with Patrick at OHM to be absolutely clear, but it's usually just signage. It might be longer, but I don't believe it's any wider than what the standard width is currently. It may require some sort of pad on the curb side with an extension to the sidewalk. So you may have some sort of flare with an extension to the sidewalk. So that would be something.
Marcus is here.
I'm sorry?
Marcus is here from OHM. Marcus,
Okay.
Any thoughts on this?
Evening.
Hi.
No, not really. Michelle's right. So the width, it isn't different because it can't be practically. But you do want to strategically locate them so that there's an accessible route nearby, a curb ramp. So either they're the nearest space in the corner, or you might have to do what Michelle said, as install a mid-block ramp or pad. Accessibility.
This picture is a little deceiving.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen the picture. It makes it look like the car is sticking out in the middle of the lane. It puts a 1.5 meter or 4 feet.
So there's two legal ways to do barrier-free or handicap spaces. In parallel parking, you can have the fan accessible,
which is what this diagram shows, or you can have just the side handicap space. But you see the same thing in parking lots. There's van accessible spaces that have that zone next to them that allow for, the vans, and vehicles like that. And there's also essentially normally sized spaces. So the schematic on the page here is for the van accessible. So there's options, and that would be, I think Michelle mentioned, or it's in the report, that the one Baker Road was one of the streets that should be looked at, and that's in line for resurfacing in a couple of years. So
Right.
that's something that definitely be looked at and discussed about where, how many.
Okay. Thank you.
Does that help with the question about page 31?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
I think it means that we're gonna look at it in 2 years. So now,
You
I
do,
think it's worth looking at or having a discussion about just generally this topic and more in depth of, are there areas, because there are 2 blocks that are low or have 0. And to me, it's worth taking a look at and a discussion of what can we do.
okay.
Do you want to see it on an agenda?
At some point would be nice.
yeah, I think that's a good idea.
So the last little update I'll give you, if there are no other questions, the Dexter Crossing Shopping Mall has been sold. Carnegie Companies are the new owners. They're going to be reaching out to us shortly to talk about what the process is when new people come in, et cetera. They are already aware of incremental tap fees, so that won't be a surprise for them. Excuse me. And they are working with the owners of Noble Appliance right now on a sharing a contractor so that the parking lot is repaired. And I actually do have a voicemail that came in today from the owners of Noble Appliance to let me know what that schedule is going to be. So that's moving along in a positive manner. The other thing is Noble Appliance is for sale, the property. They're looking to sell it and have a 5-year lease back arrangement. So, excuse me. We'll see where that goes, but that's out there right now as well.
Okay.
Okay?
Any other updates, Michelle?
No, sir.
Any other questions from Michelle? Okay, Jane?
So, yeah, so I saw some chatter this weekend about the new pasta place and the old Encore. I don't remember seeing any of that come through, but I was excited to see that. I thought maybe I missed it, or I don't know if you had anything to add about that, or.
I apparently, I thought that I had let everyone know, and please forgive me if it was an oversight. They did receive final zoning compliance 3 weeks ago now, I think that was. But they were going to let us know when they were going to have a grand opening. And I think like any new business starting, they just lost track of it. So they had a grand opening and we didn't know about it.
That's fine. I was just excited to see there's a new business, and I thought, oh.
Yep.
Michelle, did they build a kitchen then? That building had no kitchen.
Yes, they built a kitchen, ma'am. And we worked with Dan and Tim and DPW to make sure that they had the utilities part of Public Works to make sure they had the proper grease trap and or grease interceptor, whatever the term is. So that even though they're not really doing anything that would have that kind of material, in the future, if they wanted to go that route, it's already set up.
Excellent. Okay, thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Last chance for questions? Okay, we are over on to page 3 of the agenda to our city manager report. Please.
We had our new administrative assistant, Jenna Hewick, start today. She is a Dexter High School grad who went away to college and came back, and we're able to bring her on board. And now that we are finally fully staffed, we have scheduled training for BSNA for all staff, which is our enterprise-wide management system. We're also working on putting together a all-staff meeting, either end of April, beginning of March, so that way we can make sure everybody is acquainted and bring everybody up to speed on who everybody else is. I just sent the draft of the newsletter over to the printer, so I expect that to go out this week. There's a draft of the newsletter. I emailed it out to council, but there's also a copy in the packet. If anybody has any questions or comments on anything in that, I'd be happy to answer them. The community survey is still going strong. I think we were just under 500. So quite a bit over 500.
And remind me how long that's gonna be out there?
We're gonna leave it open through the end of April.
Okay, you might want to say that in one of the upcoming communications.
But strong turnout for that. Friday also started the Easter egg hunt. We put eggs out in wood egg pallets out in each of the parks. And there's a letter on each one, unscramble a word from each park to create a phrase, bring it up to the office and get some prizes. Jamie came up with the riddles for each park, which have been well received. Tim already talked a little bit about the Second Street water main project. Does anybody have any questions for me?
A resident reached out again to ask about the sidewalk signage about walking bikes or wheels, or I don't know.
Yeah, so I was gonna bring it back to parks to help select specific locations, but we did buy the template and it's in the office.
Okay, so we'll probably put that next week. Thank you.
Any other questions for Justin? So now?
Yeah, I saw on the ACH for Paint Dexter Festival, the form for volunteers.
Mhm.
Is there a plan for a sign up genius kind of list as previous for people to?
Yes, yeah, we will open up a sign of genius, but right now we're just kind of trying to collect names
Names.
that we
And let
can.
people know that there is an opportunity there. Yeah.
Fantastic, thank you.
And for Paint Dexter, artist registration is now open. And names are rolling in for that, so we're hoping to be back up to full speed for Paint Dexter this year. We're all excited about
Be
it.
nice.
Looking forward to it.
So before we leave your report, I believe we were gonna cover the workshop.
Yeah.
Right? We have a tentative workshop planned.
For the 25th at 6 p.m. But sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, we had a 3-hour workshop on Thursday. So now, and Jamie and I were here for 3 hours, right? It was a pretty good conversation, I think.
What?
Thank you to the chief for doing a good job. I guess the question is, where do we want to go next? Jamie?
So I think I had suggested at the end of that work session that I would be happy to, because I think one of the last handouts the chief gave was maybe just a couple pages. And I was interested in, so my understanding of where the process left off before I joined council, where there were sort of two competing plans or two competing ways forward. One was building new at the Meadowview site, and one is renovating at the existing site or doing something to update the existing site. And I am happy, I feel like what I need to be able to move forward next is to consider whatever those two competing plans were, And have one work session on the one set and one on the other set. But in order to do that, I needed input from those folks who were part of those conversations to make sure that I am properly understanding that, what those plans were. But so based on what I'm understanding, I would be happy to have a work session on the plan to build new in light of the chief's, the information provided on Thursday night, and another work session on the proposed plan to renovate, whatever that is. But I think we need to, work together to figure out what exactly those would be. But that's what I'm interested in doing next, is really digging into the plans. And figuring out how to, move forward with that.
Okay, so can you get with the chief and get with David and whichever one you think you have the most information on, we'll go over one of the plans on the 25th and the next one on the 9th.
Unless somebody wants to, unless there's a different suggestion. I have to do that.
Of April and then 9th, you said? or-
Yeah, our next two meetings. Okay. Sure. Justin, anything else for us? When are you planning to have the first budget?
So I think we're shooting for April 27th for a work session, which is a Wednesday. Is everyone still okay with that? My goal would be to have it out the week before.
Okay. Great. Do you need anything from us for that, or are you okay, or?
I think I'm doing okay.
Okay. Thank you for including the entire sheriff contract in here.
And just, I did briefly speak with Scott Mansell a little earlier today on that. And he's still doing some research, but his thought is that the way it's written lends itself to the presumption that we were going to provide space for the sheriff. It was just a question, it wasn't a question of if, it was a question of where. So that isn't the final word on it, but that's kind of a brief summary of what we talked
Just
about.
for our sheriff, but not for all the other people.
Correct.
What do you mean by other people?
The townships.
Yeah, there's no offices in any of the townships. It's part of. our-
Oh, yeah, I got you. Yeah, I got you. Susan. Thanks for clarifying that. Anything else? Okay. I provided a written report. Number of things going on, but I want to spend my time tonight on the meeting that I had on April 6th with the new property owners or newer property owners of the former Sloan Kingsley property. I invited Michelle and Justin to meet with me. We met a gentleman named David Lutton. Some of you probably know him, Paul United, lives in Scioto Township. And he is the project manager, I think he introduced himself as, for Baker Road Land Holdings LLC. Is what, if we looked on the tax rolls, that's what would be on the tax roll, I think. He was present here with their planner / engineering project manager, which is Tom Covert, the Dexter resident. A lot of us know Tom, lives over on Edison Street. Tom has been the planner or the project engineer associated with this project all the way back to 2004. Beyond, ever since the Sloans were interested in selling some of the property. Mr. Lutton did most of the speaking. He expressed that they don't believe that Eagle is going to give them a discharge permit to Mill Creek for sanitary discharge. They are doing soil testing with the idea that they potentially could get a groundwater discharge, but they don't know the answer to that at this point. They're still going through their soil studies. He reported that, but
Just one second.
Yeah, go ahead, jump
They're
in.
not- Yeah, they're not gonna consider wells and septics.
excuse me, they would prefer to have more density than what they feel like they
That
get.
would allow,
on
that
wells
would
and
allow.
septics.
Okay.
Yeah, the current, their current thinking is that there are portions of the property that are worth protecting. Some of us have heard a lot of this before. Okay, there's some quality woodlands and natural areas on the property. If they were to just go with the traditional 1 acre lots and divide it up, they figure they would have to probably lose a chunk of that, because in order to get the number of properties on there, you'd have to use those natural areas.
Did they mention what they do want? How many units they would like to achieve?
They threw some numbers around, but there's no firm number.
Okay,
And I'm not gonna open up a number, because that's the worst idea ever, is to talk about the number first.
well, I just want to get a feel for what they.
Not that
No,
here's a
that's
bad
fine.
idea, but
No, that's fine.
they want to get more density than what they can get out of what it's zoned for. Mr. Lutton believes that he'd like to provide a variety of housing types. Everything from affordable. I asked him to define that, and he said somewhere between 200 and 300,000 is about the lowest he feels they could reasonably be.
What's portable?
What's that?
What's portable?
Affordable.
Affordable. all right.
Affordable.
I was just saying Affordable, wait a minute.
You can take your house across the river.
Yeah.
No, I was thinking about the mobile units that we worked really hard to avoid one other time.
Prior to having the meeting, I called Scioto Township Supervisor Will Hathaway, and because I told him, I said, I'll meet with anybody, but I haven't been in the business of planning outside our boundaries. Okay, I've long believed that redevelopment of a lot of the key properties and properties within the village boundary, or now city boundary, is a much better use of our taxpayer dollars, and we can add density here in town without adding additional assets that we have to take care of. You know, the Grand, or the Millennium Place that we approved on Grand is an example of that. There's already sanitary sewer, there's already water there. We're adding more people and density to a system that doesn't add water and sewer necessarily. But they are still interested in the idea of, connecting to our wastewater treatment plant. Justin was good enough to, prior to the meeting, forward me the old reports that OHM had worked on. Our collection system, sanitary collection system, has capacity to transport wastewater through it to the plant. They're pretty comfortable with that assertion. Now, I suppose depending on the number, that could be challenged, but for the most part, they felt good about that. But the components at our wastewater treatment plant, there would need to be significant upgrades there to do this. So and they were aware of this. The Baker Road, David Lutton, Baker Road LLC, the Land Holdings LLC they were aware of all that. They'd read those. What their main question is they believe that there is a willingness in Scioto right now to consider a 425 agreement. And they're wondering if we want to explore what a framework for a 425 agreement might be for that property. So I told them I would bring that back. I know that everybody on this board has some familiarity with the fact that, that's been talked about for 20 years. I told them 20 years ago, the first time I met Tom Covert was at the Dexter High School when they did a presentation on Harvest Valley. That's what it was called, a name that has forever been moved somewhere else because that name got destroyed in the process. This question it comes up every 5 years or so, right? Seems like it resurfaces I don't know if there's any interest on this board or not. When I told Mr. Lutton this, that I would at least try to explain what the conversation was about. If you want to hear from Mr. Lutton, we could arrange to have him talk to us. We have a number of other things that I told him that we're doing. He wanted to know if within 30 days we could figure it out. And I said, Mr. Lutton, respectfully, we've got a couple other big issues going on. We're in the middle of our budget season. You're not gonna have an answer in 30 days. But his goals are genuine. I will say that. He seems genuine in his desire to try and create something on the property that could be good for, SIO/Dexter. But then again, we would have to be willing to take on, considerable assets. And I think what SIO is hoping is that what they would want out of it is they would want a lot of those properties preserved. The natural ones they want to somehow get Ferry Lonick and their preservation group together and somehow preserve those. Thoughts? And then over time, it would phase into the city, it'd be one where there'd be a phased in period where both communities would get revenue until at some point in time it completed the annexation process. And so that's the framework of this thought. Zach.
For those new members, 425 agreement is Lethbridge is in that right now, right?
Correct.
The idea is it's an
It's
amicable.
more than Westridge, but it's all the Western Township.
Yeah, potential, but it's an amicable annexation where we still cut them a check for whatever tax revenues they would have gotten on that for a period of time, usually 25 years or so.
50.
And so they're happier because they don't get the big chunk lopped off, and we're happier because we get the services. So it's my planning spiel.
I'm sorry, you're right. The tax thing is 12 years after we become a city.
12 years, okay.
Sorry, but I thought I was hearing wrong. The duration of the agreement was 50 years, starting in 1997 to 2047.
Yeah, but that's negotiable, right?
Absolutely.
From the planning side, I'll start with this. Change is neither good nor bad. Good change is good, bad change is bad. And so when we started this discussion last time, I started with there's this kind of healthy times where people are starting to think, will this development be a net benefit or net drain on the community? Usually in terms of budget. The rule of thumb is around 8 units per acre of residential is where you don't lose money. I do too also prefer more people in the middle. It has a lot of good synergy, to use an awful term, but people downtown are going to walk downtown, less traffic, more money spent downtown. Looking around though, this is also likely the last large parcel that could be incorporated in the city. And I'm in favor of if it's done well. The reason why I say that is community finances are still tilted towards growth model. Tap fees are still important for how we fund improvements to our water and sewer system. And having more people in those systems allows us to better maintain it. Once it gets built up, they're gonna have to, I suspect, I would want them to provide for what their additional capacity is. I know when I talked with the schools previously, they are very excited about having more households because they're looking at the townships that are aging. So instead of having mom, dad, 2 kids, it's mom and dad. So the houses are still there, but there are less kids. I think it presents a great opportunity for many different types of housing products that we don't have here. And so that's very exciting. I will again point to the model of Cherry Hill. So if anyone goes over to Costco, follow that sign that points you south of Ford Road to Cherry Hill and look at that. It's a fabulous thing. I would also be interested in, there's a tool in planning and zoning where you can create a joint planning commission. So if Scioto Township is nervous about what's developed there, we can create a joint entity to review this as it gets approved. It's important to have paths. I think Scioto Township will love it if there are pathways through there. But and the thing too that I know we want to be really good neighbors, but when I look at the commercial development on Jackson, that is sucking from our commercial development. So Dexter Crossing has never had every single storefront open at the same time. You can go 2 miles to the south and there's commercial all over the area. So their large and open development on Jackson is affecting us. And so if they're not super happy with it, I would still be okay with it because it's a way for us to improve. A couple of things I would say is it provides an opportunity for us to get additional wells for a water system. If it goes down the path further, one of the things is we can figure out how many DPW people we need, how many office people we need for our current population and what the increase would be. And that can work into our math as well. Of are we gonna generate enough revenues to balance that? That's my spiel. Thank you.
Well, all good thoughts. I mean, there's a lot of topics that would have to be covered and thought about in this.
Oh, one other detail is if it's done well, it could be done as a plan unit development. So plan unit development on larger scale like this, you don't need to do land preservation because as part of it, it says we're going to do all these units over here and this piece will be forever natural wetlands. There's some high year quality stuff. We could also do something called non-contiguous PUD. So Scioto Township has a lot of preservation areas. They could, as part of the development, purchase development rights on other properties and use them for here. So I know Scioto Township would really appreciate that because then they don't have to spend money on the purse to do that. And we get to have people closer to where our infrastructure is. That's it for me.
Sanam.
I agree with a lot of this spiel, so I'm not gonna repeat that. I think the main thing for me is that thinking, so anything that is done to that property, whether it's part of Scioto Township or us or whatnot, will impact us big time, right? It's right by our doors, basically, our roads, our schools. The greatest impact of that property, whatever is planned there, is on Dexter. So for me, I would really like to be involved in that conversation. I mean, like Dexter should be involved in that conversation. And I would like personally to see that conversation happening. So to me, a 425 agreement conversation at least gives us that opportunity to be at the table for that conversation and keep it going. And in more of a potentially meaningful way for Dexter. And in that also sort of like from that bigger picture of like impact on Dexter, then the next impact is Dexter Crossing right next to it. And I have heard from many, many residents in the last few years that I've been here about that property, and they continuously ask me about it, especially every time that it comes up. So yes, I think conversations such as paths and things that impact that subdivision directly should also be viewed. And I think one of the things, and Michelle can correct me if I'm wrong, last time that the conversation about the plan came about from the developer, there wasn't a I think there was a requirement to set up a hearing with the neighboring homes and give enough time for them to participate in a public hearing. And I don't think that was done properly from the developer and Scioto. But I would like to see that happening as part of whatever conversation we are having or when the plans are presented. So Dexter Crossing residents have a chance of directly giving their input about it. Those were my two thoughts.
Okay. So again, the question I'm asking is, do we have a majority of council that is interested in exploring? this. My thoughts are if there's more than, 4 that want to do this, or 4 or more that want to do this, then what I would do is reach back out to Will, Supervisor in SIO, and discuss, like a process for how to do that. And I don't mean, meet weekly or whatever, but figure out whether he wants to bring, how many, we gotta decide how many people are in those rooms, right? 'Cause and obviously they could be public meetings, or they'd have to, they could be public, or they could be not public, but we'd have to discuss the framework for how we're gonna have those discussions. Which probably means we need to talk about what our goals would be for, there's a lot that goes into planning how you do this. And then, of course, the property owner's involved too, but I told Mr. Lutton that I would introduce as best I could the topic tonight and try to get feedback from all of you. And I appreciate that you're all here. If you need to think about it some more after, I didn't write it all into the meeting or into the report. If you need to think about that a little bit, we can always confirm at the next meeting how we feel about that. And I'm not rushing anybody, is what I'm getting at. If people need more time to go. James?
So I am definitely open to having a conversation about this. It's relevant to our city. However, it gets developed in this 3 or 425 or something else. I think my bigger concern is the timing. So had they not approached us with this question, it would not have been on my radar as a priority of something that I wanted to be talking about. So I appreciate that they've come to us to talk about it. So I guess my question is, or, like something to think about is, to what extent do we need to allow them to dictate the timing of when we address our time and energy on this topic? If we don't do something in a certain amount of time, are they going to force our hand in a different way because they're going to pursue some other development opportunities? If we don't engage right now, if we wait 3 to 6 months, are they just not really able to do anything and they can wait on our timeline? I'd rather wait. I guess is what I'm
Jamie,
saying.
I think that if there was a quick way to do something, somebody would have already done it there. Okay, there's no example that they found of an easy way to say this is the backup plan. Okay, that they want to talk. I think that we should not feel rushed at all. I told Tom and Dave, I said, at one time we accepted the annexation of that property. Our council made a decision, we accepted the annexation. And the process at that time was that would have then gone to the county for them to approve, if I remember. And the county of Washtenaw did not want to get in between 2 communities that they valued. They both value both communities.
Correct.
And so they said, we're not even putting it on the agenda until you guys work out the conditions of the annexation. And we spent, I don't know, it seemed like a year or more talking about goals for the Baker Road corridor and goals for the property. And I will say that at that time, again, that was a different Scioto Township board than is there now. Maybe only Donna Palmer was still, I don't know, I can't remember who was always there, but I think she's the only common one that dates back to that point. But we ultimately, it got that whole project got dragged into our cityhood discussion. And people said, okay, so now you're going to be a city, you got to get bigger. That's why we become a city. And it wasn't worth it. And so we pulled it back. We decided to give up that decision. Frankly, I haven't thought about, I told David this, I haven't thought about any goals for that property since then. Because it's outside the community. I haven't thought about it at all. Even 4 years ago when they came and were doing the research on the capacity study. So, I'm willing to think about that if that's what council wants to do. I think that slow managed growth has always been proven to be a successful thing if you can do it that way. But again, we just approved 23 units on Grand Street. Nobody batted an eye. There's no objection at all. 23 units on Grand Street. We hardly got any comments when we approved 78 on Grand Street. for the Grandview Commons. But the numbers are gonna be much bigger that will get talked about here. And everybody has to be prepared for that if that's. I just want you to be aware that that's what's gonna happen. Okay, and then, but I'm okay to have the discussion. Even if we have the discussions, it doesn't mean we have to do anything.
Sean has a good word as well.
Yeah, hold on, I saw it. Thank you, Justin, appreciate that. Sanam?
Yeah, I agree with, my comment was not, I want to clarify, not necessarily that we move forward with a 425, more that discussion will allow us to at least have a discussion about a piece of land that is right next to us and will impact us in a major way, no matter what is built there or to what size is built there, right? So it is, in my opinion, more beneficial for us to be part of that conversation versus having to deal with the consequences of what is built there and us not having any either input or conversation. So that's it's in that spirit that I want to get involved in that conversation. But I also agree that right now we have priorities, so I'm hoping that they can wait a little bit. And, you know, as you said, this has been on the table for so long, and I don't think they also have a solution that, you know, can happen in a month or so to hopefully give us that timeline. But to me, it is beneficial for us as a community to be involved in that conversation rather than dealing with consequences.
Michelle, thanks for waiting.
Oh, no problem. Thank you, Sean. I was just going to follow up. I took some fairly extensive notes from the conversation when we had the meeting. And to the question about their timeline, they did, David did provide us with basically what his time frame is. He said that they could handle 3 to 4 years, you know, waiting for a decision to be made, not just from the city standpoint, but if this were to move forward and into development, his time frame is 3 to 4 years. What he can't do is he can't wait on this project for another 10 or 20. So I hope that helps put into reference or into focus what our time element would be in that 3 to 4 years as far as the discussion that Sean has asked for.
So if there's, Juan, you haven't said anything, thoughts? No thoughts? Okay, Donna, thoughts?
No, not at this point.
Paul?
How many developers have tried to make that piece of property work out over the years? So you said 20
Well, it
years.
was, again, I don't know what happened before 2004, but the first meeting I was aware of it was 2004. And the property owner himself, Dick Sloan, and was heavily involved in the conversations. I mean, he was a part of it at that point. And then at some point, after 2000 and, I don't know, 10, 11, the property, he sold the property, or he you know, we're not dealing with Dick Sloan anymore, so to
No.
speak. But the Jim Heisler from Peter's Building
Right,
was the name that what I remember from the very early on phase. And he was involved all the way up even through this past 2017 or 18 or whatever it was that they did the last time they were in front of us with that
right.
engineering report.
So there's 2, now we got a third one, right?
Michelle, what was the name of the third person that was there that was on a phone or on an iPad? A Zoom
Hang on
meeting?
one moment, I've got it all written down.
There was another gentleman that was another partner, but it's
Yes, it was Dave Lutton, Tom Covert, and Jim Flory.
Jim
Jim
Flory.
Flory was the gentleman on the phone.
He's another partner, an investor that's in I don't know him. I didn't know the name.
Right.
But I think over time, Higgins Development or something Higgins was part owner of one of the properties. I think Peter's Building held the 80 acres directly south of Dexter Crossing previously. I asked him if there are different owners of the different parcels. It's all under one Baker Land Holdings LLC right now. So I don't know what the answer to that question is, Paul. Couple three over the 20 years?
Sean, is there any proposal for commercial? Because Heisler had commercial in his.
We have no commercial.
Commercial is what I don't remember hearing that.
Okay.
But you know, the decision, you know, that settlement that we did with Eagle, with the phosphorus limits. You know, all that ties back to why Eagle isn't gonna allow anything to be discharged in Mill Creek.
Right.
You know, it all, and I struggle with that because I don't think necessarily that the state is supposed to be making decisions that limit development that way necessarily. Although I understand why, you know, phosphorus is important, and we certainly have our challenges with our limits that we've talked about, and you know, we'll have in the future, because our limits aren't going to go up if we, you know, this would have an impact on our plant. What did we say we had in terms of number of households now? In
And
the city?
we have,
There's 17
1,700 to 1,800 utility accounts.
Yeah, that's what I remember reading in the waste management report then, right? You know, so you're gonna add 10%, 15%, 20 up, you know, depends on where the number is, right? And those are big impacts.
Yeah.
But if there's, all right, so you're interested and Zach and now are interested, so that's at least four, without, nobody else has to say it. I will explore I will fill David London in, and I will explore a forum opportunity for how we could meet on this with Supervisor of SIO, if that's okay with everybody. No, bring that back. All right, thank you for having that conversation. Is there anything else on my report that you're interested in? We'll move on. Any council member reports? J7. Okay, we have 4 items on the consent agenda. Somebody could move the consent agenda, please.
I move to approve the 4 items listed on the consent agenda. Bills and payroll in the amount of $525,043.47. The recommendation from the Art Selection Committee for the temporary sculpture display, the Arbor Day proclamation, and the publication of notice of delinquent utility bills.
Okay, moved by Ms. Fisher,
I second.
second by Sanam. Thank you. Thank you both. Pam, please call the vote to approve K1, 2, 3, and 5.
Hubbard,
Yes.
Cousins,
Yes.
Abram,
Yes.
Michelle's.
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Griffin,
Yes.
Keel.
Yes. Thank you. Motion carries on the consent agenda. We have no unfinished business this evening, so we have 2 items of new business. The first one is consideration of modification of traffic signal timings at the intersection of Dexter Ann Arbor Road and Dan Hoy, and the intersection of Main Street and Baker Road. We can take those one at a time.
I'll make them together.
You'll make them together?
Yeah.
All right, what is the motion? To do both of the improvements?
Yes.
Okay, so motion by Cousins,
Second.
second by Michelle, thank you. Justin?
Yeah, so we talked at not the last meeting, but the meeting before about these 2 intersections. I asked OHM and our DPW to get in touch with Dan Deverich, who helps us with the traffic signal timings. And I think everyone is in pretty good concurrence about Ann Arbor Road and Dan Hoy. That signal, it needs to be extended. The timing there is not appropriate for current standards. There was some internal debate about Main Street and Baker Road and the potential pedestrian benefits versus the potential traffic impacts. And as was included in the report last time, there would likely be some negative traffic impacts to Ann Arbor Road and Baker going through that intersection. And the question ultimately is whether the pedestrian benefits outweigh the traffic impacts. And at the last meeting, council, the way the discussion seemed was that that answer may be yes. But there were some additional staff discussions about the potential of if we do back up traffic more as a result of that intersection, would folks cut through the neighborhoods more? Would we need to install an additional no right-hand turn from Baker onto Ann Arbor Street? Because if you're installing an LPI there with the idea of preventing anyone or any traffic movement through that intersection while a pedestrian is crossing, then then people being able to make a right on a red kind of defeats that purpose. Tim, Argus, I don't know if you have anything you'd like to add to that.
Yeah, sorry. Basically, when I was talking to Kurt today, he expressed the same thing that Justin had said. So same with Dan and his fellow from OHM, and that was the concern that you outlined right there. And that was Kurt's biggest thing was he understood the crosswalks outdated up there in Illinois. He thinks that should change, but he does not believe that it should change now.
Jim?
Yeah, I have a question. So we got the report about the impacts on traffic at Main and Baker. Did that account for adding the no turn in the spot where we don't have it, or did it not account for that? I'm guessing it did not account for that.
It did not.
Okay.
So we could run it again with that. That came up actually after this report was provided with internal staff discussion.
Do you want to have them run it a little different? Do you want to take action on one and not the other?
But yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm kind of torn. Yeah, I feel totally fine about the timing of the intersection at Dexter and Arbor and Dan Hoey. I guess sort of like the expert recommendations giving me a little bit more pause, although I'm still inclined to like do the thing that I think is better for the pedestrian than necessarily the traffic for me. But then I kind of feel like we don't have all the information in front of me to understand what the true impact will be on the traffic if that part was considered. And then I'm also thinking like, oh, well, there's a no turn on red there anyways for the one side, and how does that relate to pedestrian? Yeah. So I'm rethinking things a little bit. So
Definitely have concerns about the traffic, only because I already hear so many concerns about the traffic. And if we're gonna be making the decision, it's only gonna make that worse. I agree, like I want good walkability, but is that trade-off worth it? Just not, and without having all the information, I'm not. I don't think I can say whether or not it is.
I guess I'll start with questions. There are manual uniform traffic control device signs that are posted generally on turns that'll say yield to pedestrians. So it's not a no turn on red, but hey, there are pedestrians that are going to be walking, don't walk there. Which I think would be a fabulous thing for us to put basically at every intersection where we've got a stoplight. Not real common in Michigan, but if you go to Chicago, New York, they have a lot of those. You can't walk through people, drive through people in New York anyways, but So I would be in favor of that. And I'll share my bias here. Planners, we look at two different aspects of transportation planning. There's mobility based, which is how can you get people from place to place as fast as possible? And there's accessibility based, with how can you allow people different options to get to things. I don't have any worries at all about traffic from this. I say that because the folks' travel time is fungible. So if people have decided they're spending that extra minute is too much, they're going to change when their trip is, or they're not going to take it. So if you look at areas where there's construction, like I-75 is going to have major construction for like the next 50 years in Oakland County. There's going to be less traffic because people aren't going to sit for 3 hours to get from Troy down to Detroit. So traffic is fungible. But the bigger idea, downtown should be for people, not people driving through as fast as possible. And if that means folks who are going to Hamburg Township or to Pinckney or to Howell, who have a 40-mile trip, have to wait another minute or 3 minutes in here, I'm absolutely okay with that bargain. Are we able to set the left turn or the leading indicator to go only if triggered by a button?
Yes.
Yeah, I believe that Patrick confirmed that we could.
Okay, but right now we don't have buttons for all the directions at Baker Road.
I believe we do. I
There's-
believe
yeah, there's
that
that- yeah,
there is a button.
That activated for all movements.
Okay, I guess I only know that for crossing Ann Arbor.
I don't know that it's directional, that there is a button at every intersect, at every L crosswalk leading up to Baker and Maine. I don't know that pushing it
This is for Baker, this is for me.
right.
So
Well, I would offer that the one at Baker and Maine only be triggered if the button is pushed. And if we need to do improvements so that we have the directional thing, then we make that happen. And if we brought back. I guess I accept my offer. Second.
I guess the question I would have, Marcus, I don't know if you know this or not, but does it know where when the button's pushed, does it know which button's pushed?
I don't know. Honestly, I'll have to look into that closer. If it's a directional.
One, I mean, to Zach's point, two of the directions, two of the buttons, you can go different ways, right?
Right.
If you're on the park side, you're only crossing south, whether you're closer to Fillmore or you're closer to the park. You know, you're only coming across,
Yeah, it's
right?
a
It's
T, right,
obvious
it's-
it's obvious right there, right? Well, what would you run differently then, if you're gonna remodel something, what would describe to me what you would do?
Well, the model's built already, so it would just be we could run it with the no right turn on red restriction.
Yeah, okay,
It makes an assumption about, how many cars making each movement based on the count data that we have. I don't expect that it'd be,
I mean, it's just the northbound Baker to eastbound,
yes.
right, that we're talking, right?
Yes. I don't expect that it would, but it's not any effort to, it's basically a couple of keystrokes to rerun it with that parameter. But I guess the other thing I would point out that there isn't a right or wrong answer. It's just kind of weighing the two, as mentioned. So from a traffic engineering perspective, really either decision is fine. But the delay that we're talking about, and it may change a little if we run it again, but it's roughly 2 seconds for each movement during the peak. So it's an additional 2-second average wait time.
Well, I used
It's not,
to come through there all the time when I would drive to work and back. And I'm trying to, I think the last couple of years have been abnormal because of working from home partially and not driving as much, but and help me here, most of the time I would go left. If I was coming up Baker to go home, I'm going left. I'm going towards the fire station, if you will, or through town. I don't recall many people.
Well, and there isn't, because most people cut Hudson or Dan Holloway or something. You usually don't come all the way
Well, you're
in.
not gonna stop that. That just happens.
No, I know, that's my point, though, that most cars don't come all the way up Baker to go back.
Well, where I'm, but I mean, the part you would be analyzing by adding the no turn on red is the turn going east. It's the other way. And that, I don't recall that being. I mean, when people talk about traffic, I don't think that's the issue.
I'm agreeing with you. I'm saying I don't think it would change the
That's
balance.
that's how I would go. Yeah, it was always like me passing by.
Oh, chain of
huge
cars,
line of
right?
cars and being the only car turning right.
Right, I'm just speaking out loud here, I think a lot of it, but the analysis that they would do might show a little more delay in that movement of the northbound to the eastbound, but it isn't gonna affect anything
Right.
coming from the other directions or coming from town, coming from Country Market over Country Market used to be coming down the hill. It's not gonna change that part of the simulation at all.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's what I said. We can easily rerun it, but I don't expect it would change the analysis.
I can add, based on the 2022 Google Street View, it appears that the buttons are only for crossing Main, not for crossing Baker. So it could be triggered, that two second meeting could be triggered now, but not for Baker.
Say that again, how do you know?
Because the post's right next to Baker, or to Main, not to Baker. Little arrow. On the corners.
Okay, so we have everywhere we're at, we have a motion by Cousins, second by Michelle's to approve both changes that's on the table. If council is comfortable doing that, I'm happy to call the vote. If you think that there's a reason to do them separately or get more information, we can do that.
But may I offer Mr. Cousins an amendment?
Yeah, go ahead.
That the one in Baker be triggered by crosswalk buttons to the extent possible. And that yields to pedestrian sign be added on northbound Baker for the east turn. It's R10-15.
Instead of the no turn on red.
Yeah,
I can accept that.
okay, I accept it too.
Sorry to clarify that the yield to pedestrians is Baker turning right on,
Yep,
but not replacing the existing, no right turn.
There isn't a no turn on red.
No, I meant this one.
Oh, yeah, not replacing.
Is it possible to repeat that? Just for-
So triggering the LPI on button push
to the extent possible.
At Baker.
at Main Baker,
Okay, and then there was a second part.
and then installing yield to pedestrian signs.
Yeah, Marcus, the question I guess I would have is if somebody pushes the button now, does it run through a full cycle of LPI in every direction before it then reverts back to?
I don't know.
Because if it doesn't know which direction in order to give the button's coming from, it's got to at least
Right,
go through a full cycle for somebody to have a chance to use one, right?
right.
That's why I asked. the
Yeah, I'll find out.
question.
So the activation for the buttons is a tweak to the diamond plan anyways. So I'll get back with Steve Daring and Dan Daprich and we can clarify how exactly that will all work. But we can, I think if it's part of the motion to include it to the extent possible, that's clear. We can do that and then let you know sort of the functionality that it'll be.
If there are other extents that could be explored.
Well, it takes getting used to a little bit. I've worked with them in another community, and if the signal's in the middle of its existing cycle, sometimes it has to cycle before it actually does that. And we have directional buttons in each direction on those. Anyway, I think if you look into that, I don't have any problem going forward with the motion. We can always come back once if you can bring the information back before anything's actually
We
implemented.
can, and I think it was mentioned too, the part of the planned CMAC, the county CMAC project, these intersections and the controllers, PET, all that stuff is gonna be looked at again,
Yeah. it needs to be upgraded.
you know, not that too distant future, so it'll be another opportunity to enhance it even more.
Jim?
Yeah, I'll just say that I think my hesitancy was adding the no turn on red sign, because as a driver, I don't like those, because I feel like I'm stopped, I know when I can proceed through the intersection, I'm responsible enough to make that decision for myself. So I think my understanding is that Zach is not doing that, but replacing it with the turning vehicles yield to pedestrian. I appreciate that, because it's not doing the thing I don't want, and it's actually doing something that I think might even be better than the LPI, which is a visual reminder of saying, hey, watch, there might be pedestrians here. So I probably-
Okay, everybody understands the motion? Jen, please call the vote.
Cousins,
Yes.
Hubbard, yes, Michelle,
Yes.
Arab,
Yes.
Griffin,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Keo.
Yes. Thank you. Motion carries. We are now at old item K4, which is now M2. Consideration of award of emergency sewer lead replacement work at 8140 Main Street for an amount not to exceed 24,200.
I'll make that motion.
Moved by Fisher,
Second.
second by Michelle. Thank you. And Zach, you asked to be pulled off, so I will.
Yep, so I have a couple of questions. This is my hat, as our representative to the BAFD. How big an impact will this have on the ability for the fire station to function while we're doing the work? Is the
Well, one
apron-
section's already been taken care of.
Okay,
The next section is gonna be the brick pipe bursting, okay, which is underneath the embankment, which is the reason we went that way, is because obviously the embankment is the biggest portion. Plus it's how deep they have to go in Alpine Street, which is, we're figuring around 10 to 12 feet before they can get their the riser that comes off. We can make that transition. So one of the things we did find is, and we weren't expecting was, so coming out of the fire department, we went from 2 different types of pipe, PVC and SDR. Not that it's a huge difference, but there's still a difference. Plus it was also 4-inch that I end up being into a 6-inch. So we ended up going, we talked about this and made the decision of going 6 inches the whole way because we don't know the future of the building. And if for some reason that becomes a commercial building, it needs a 6-inch lead, it'll have that. So it'll be a whole new pipe, all new pipe from basically from that outside of that wall all the way up to the Alpine Street.
so the work in the apron is done.
Yep, they got taken care of on Friday.
And did we get new concrete with it, or is it just a cold patch?
It's cold patch for now. It will be done with, he's got a couple spots he's got to come back and do. So he's got enough asphalt there for his work. Now we're there. He's got one on Hudson Street. He's got to take care of the apron over on Baker Street that he did the other day, and a small portion over in the park. Cottage Park.
So this 19 or 24,000 includes,
Yes,
okay.
yes.
Were there any other improvements that ought to be considered now, like grease trap or oil separator? Or those
No.
internal to the building?
The only thing that we did find with the pipe, the Orangeburg portion of it is, had a substantial amount of liquid buildup of silt. So maybe something coming off of, I don't know, it could be floors or something, you know.
Wash the fire trucks and
Yes,
dirt.
that's, I'm trying to go around it, yes, it's a way. I had them install a tool clean out, okay? I prefer this, I would do this on any property if I ever owned, if I used to do it. And basically what that entails is you have a clean out that's gonna go obviously to the sewer, itself out on the road out Alpine Street, but now I also have one going into the building too. So we can get it from both angles.
Thank you.
And like Tim said, that we are looking at making sure that the traps in the floor that lead to the pipe are installed properly.
Yeah.
And.
The fun with that is that floor is really thick and you can't really put a different sized pot in there.
But you got a 4 going, like I said, going to a 6, and that's common, I mean, for a commercial building, unless you got a huge development, that's, so for that, I don't think they should see any problems anytime soon. I think they should take care of their issues. I mean, it's an old building too, you know, what happens inside that building, like you said yourself, we're trying to invest our abilities, do what we can do for preventive maintenance. In fact, I think Kurt said sometime this week or next week, he wants to sit down and discuss with the fire chief on this things.
If it's got an orange bird coming out of it, it's an old building.
This is true.
So Tim, just to follow up on Zach's question, so on page 88 of the packet, it says excavating and installing a new flooring sanitary. You're saying that was actually done as a 6?
Yes.
Okay.
And we didn't know that until, like I said, until we got down there.
Yeah, no, that's good. I'm happy with that. Okay.
So, I mean, it was a little bit extra cost, but I think we'll be coming within the budget unless something drastic out in Alpine. But we did a lateral, Eric, Eric did it, and where they did the lateral going up. And it looked, it didn't need to be redone to Alpine Street, but going up, the drop pipe, so to speak, that looks pretty okay. So we're thinking we can come there, well, not myself, but Stephen Wolf and his crew will go down there. They'll do the pipe bursting and then they'll get there. And what they're going to do is more than likely it's coming in, it's going down at a 90-degree angle. And obviously, like it says in there, they're going to go put 2 45s in there. So it won't be as drastic.
Other questions on the excavation? Ken, please call the vote.
Colorado,
Yes.
Griffin. Yes. Fisher,
Yes.
Hubbard. Yes. Michelle,
Yes.
Cousins.
Yes.
Keel.
Yes. Thank you, everybody. Motion carries. We're down to item N, council comments. Zach, you want to go first today?
I have nothing.
It's okay. So,
I just want to say that I would really like to see some conversation on Mill Creek Brewery, and I appreciate you reaching out to them to see if there are potentials for moving the project. I hate losing that project fully just because of some.
I will keep everybody informed once I talk to Nate.
Thank you.
I believe the same thing. And I as well. I agree with it.
I also do, and I was in that planning commission meeting, and I would be really disappointed if this is where the conversation stops, because I don't think it has to. I really don't. I think we have space for negotiation, and I think the will is there, and I want something, I mean, it's been a long time since something's been on that space, and personally, I think that would be a great thing to have there.
Thank you. Alex?
I have no comments tonight. thank you.
Nothing? Okay. You're running out of opportunities, buddy. You know, your
know.
term's gonna end here
I
in
know.
June.
Well, nice.
We're getting applications. Yeah. Okay, we are back around to non-arranged participation. Anyone in the audience want to add anything this evening? Anybody online? Cole? Chief? Okay, I don't see any hands going up to you. That's okay. All right, I will seek a motion for adjournment, please. At
So moved.
8:58. Moved by Sanam, second by Cousins. All in favor, please? Say aye.
Aye.
Have a great, happy Easter, everybody.
You as well.
Yeah, Easter.
Thank you all.
No.
Oh, yes, I can.